And it's welcome to Get Ready to Rock and welcome to Ray Fenwick. Now, when we ask artists what they've been doing in lockdown, certainly in 2020, in your case, Ray, it seems you've been preparing not only a 3-CD retrospective, but also a 5-track EP that's released via Sing Song Music in January 2021. And in many ways, these tracks bring your story up to date, reflect what we might call the Ray Fenwick brand. Strong melody and composition, great guitar playing and production.
I had this great interest in instrumental music because it was really, really inspiring when I played with Gary Cobain. He was the Future Sound of London and the Amorphous Androgynous. Gary's a wonderful electronic musician, creating and composing techno, dance and ambient music. And on this new project, that's a single that is the length of an album, which is about 40 minutes in Gary's case. And it was called We Persuade Ourselves We Are Immortal. Working with Gary Cobain re-inspired me to revisit some of the instrumental music that I'd recorded in the past, because the stuff that I was doing with Gary was a lot of instrumental guitar parts that were, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half long sections. So I decided to go through all the tapes that I had, and I found 5 tracks that I thought, these could be reworked, and I decided that I would do a little bit of remixing. Some of the tracks were far too long, so I decided to edit them, and it worked out really well. And I picked 5 that I thought were strong. The wording, going large. That came from a student of mine. I used to teach at Boston College in Lincolnshire, and I used to have this young guy. He was a very jolly chap. He wasn't a bad guitar player. And we used to chat a lot before the lesson started. I used to do one-to-one guitar lessons with him. And I said, what were you doing at the weekend? He said, Ray, he said, I was out giving it large. So I said, what do you mean you were out giving it large? Giving it large, giving it all I can, having a great time. So that always stuck with me, that expression, giving it large. So I just thought it was a really good title for a track. So this track has a kind of funk groove, very edgy. The title suggests full-on largeness, so that's why I called it Going Large.
Tam Tam represents the funkier side of your playing, but I reckon the funky side has always underpinned a lot of your material.
Yes, it does. One of the tracks that I did on my solo album, Keep America Beautiful, Get a Haircut, which was released in the 70s on Decca, there's a track called Stateside, which opens up with a real funky guitar. I was always a big fan of that kind of American funk and that fusion of the funk and rock. I always liked band in the 70s. Tam Tam was written in the style of 70s icons, the Crusaders and Yellow Jackets. And it's got a modern approach, I think, in both arrangement and the sound.
Trade Winds is a fusion piece, really, a bustling fusion piece.
Yep.
Now, although you're perhaps best known as a session player, able to turn your hand to any style. Have you any particular preferences in terms of genre, genre and style?
When I first started playing, the style of music that I liked was rock and roll, of people like James Burton, who in my later career I got to play with. He, the guitar player with Elvis Presley, and at the time when I listened to him, with Ricky Nelson. And of course, like all other guitar players, and I'm sure I'm not speaking out of turn here, were influenced by the great Hank Marvin. And that was one of my first interests in instrumental music. Yeah, of course, during the 70s and the 80s, I was into a lot of other things. I liked jazz funk, jazz rock. During the late 70s, I was in the Ian Gillan band, he of Deep Purple. We weren't playing music that was really in the Deep Purple style. I think people soon latched onto the fact that we were playing jazz rock. I like playing anything. I just like playing, basically. I like all styles of music. I'm really the have guitar will travel. I play anything. That is what a session guitar player is. So I've always been that person that could turn up at 10 in the morning and really be enthusiastic, perhaps about a style of music that I wasn't really crazy about, but I'd give my 100% for it.
The track Blue Jays, what inspired that song?
Blue Jays, dedicated as a tribute to the Toronto Blue Jays baseball team, who I saw play on a family visit to Canada in 2019. And it was I'd never been to a baseball game before, but I got hooked. It was absolutely fantastic, and I think the piece reflects the team spirit and the style and the raw energy. And
so we come to Firepower 44, and this was co-written with another guitarist-songwriter, Will Thompson. Yeah,
I used to live in Hastings, and Will is a good friend of mine. He had a studio there. We always used to play in local band stuff and, jams and things like that, and I always liked Will's playing. We decided to do something together, and an instrumental was the right way to go, I felt. So I said, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll come up with a drum part, and then we'll build around the drum part. So I went back home, and I programmed a drum part, and I was using at the time a Roland MSQ 700, which was one of the very first sequencers, which are so in demand again now. It's got buttons and knobs on it, and people like that.
It seems you're an early adopter of technology back in the 1960s, and that you've never lost that inquiring mind and the application.
No, I haven't. One of the things that has always kept me inquisitive about was working at college. I worked with young people, and most of the time they were bringing in stuff that I hadn't heard. It was always very funny, because they would bring in a track, and they'd hand me one headphone, and I'd go, oh, this sounds really good. And I'd listen to about 30 seconds of it, then they'd snatch it from my hand and then put another track on. Their attention span was 0. So I listened to kind of 30-second versions of most of these things, but it kept my interest in what was going on at the time. Recording techniques I've always been interested in. Right from the very first time I went into the studio, I was always asking questions about how things worked, why they worked, and I carried that right through, really. And when I started to record myself with my own recording equipment, all those things were still in my mind. And I always knew I think I always knew what sounded right, the right amount of bottom end in a track. Is the track bright enough? Does it feel right? All that kind of stuff.
you could say 60 years in the making, the music of Ray Fenwick. And the new EP, Going Large, is released via Sing Song Music and available via all the usual digital outlets. Find out more at singsongmusic.com and rayfenwick.com. From me, David Randall, and Get Ready to Rock, thank you for listening.